Welcome to the next episode and what is actually our last episode here in Alaska. It is hard to believe that our time here is coming to an end. In this episode, we find ourselves in Wrangell-St. Elias National Park. This is actually our 8th and final national park that we're hitting here in Alaska. We're gonna just spend a few days here. We're actually camped right now just outside of the town of McCarthy. We're gonna do some hiking. We're gonna take a tour of an old historic copper mill. I'm also gonna spend some time just reflecting on our time here in Alaska. Some of the highlights, some of the favorite things that we did. So come along and let's get going. Our time in Wrangell-St. Elias began on the famous McCarthy Road. This is only one of 2 roads that allows you to access the national park. The road is about 60 miles long and dead ends at the town of McCarthy. The road is dirt the whole way, and although we found it to be in relatively good shape, it's still a bit rough and took us about 3 hours to travel the 60 miles to McCarthy. The next day we set off for the Glacier hike. It's a bit complicated to get to the trailhead as there is no way to drive to it. First we had to cross a footbridge that was right near our campground. Tilly was not a fan of the metal grating on the bridge, so of course she was carried across. We walked about a half a mile and reached the small town of McCarthy, which is a very quaint and pretty little town. If you come to McCarthy, be sure to eat at the Potato. We then caught a shuttle bus, which traveled about 4.5 miles to the town of Kennicott, where we then began the hike. From Kennicott, it's about 2 or so miles to get to the toe of the Glacier, and from there you can actually access the glacier and hike on it. Wrangell-St. Elias is one of the few national parks that actually allows dogs on their hiking trails, so Tilly had a great time joining us on the hike.
I wanna wander out of the valley, where the river takes us far away from home. Time to ponder in the fields around me, where there's nothing but the breeze and the great unknown. Leave your worries and your suitcase, all you don't need, nothing but you. So don't throw your stone away.
We really enjoyed this hike and would highly recommend it if you find yourself in the area. Tilly loved it too and was pretty pooped by the end. Another highlight of our time in the park was a guided tour of the Kennicott Copper Mill. The copper mine and mill go back to the early 1900s and operated from 1911 to 1938. The mine incredibly produced over 1 billion pounds of copper, which for me is mind-boggling when you consider the location and remoteness of the mine. It just goes to show the ingenuity of the human spirit. The guided tour took us inside the mill, which is a 14-story building. The tour was great and was rich in history, and again, highly recommended. It is our last morning in Alaska, and to be honest, we are feeling a little sad this morning. We're going to be driving across the border later today into Canada as we work our way back down to the lower 48. We've heard someone say before that, Alaska has a way of just getting into your bones. We also met so many people that came up here not expecting to stay and ended up staying, and we can actually see why. There's just something special about this place. I mean, we had a lot of fun adventures. The scenery is just spectacular. It feels like every corner you turn, there's just something new, something fresh, and something beautiful. God's creation up here is something special. We're looking forward to just sharing some of our reflections and just some of our favorite moments from our time up here. All right, well, we are... Before I go any further, let me apologize for the fairly rough audio here. I was going to re-record this section, but ran out of time. I hope you still find the content very helpful. Yeah, we're literally just going to be about crossing over into the border of Canada and leaving Alaska. And we thought after spending a couple months here that we would share 5 tips or suggestions if you're ever thinking of traveling to Alaska. Our first tip is get the milepost, especially if you're going to be driving on any of the Alaska highways, and definitely if you're going to be driving up from the lower 48 through Canada. It is an invaluable resource. And I would really recommend getting it well in advance of your trip. Read through it, highlight some of the things that stand out to you, things that you want to check out. But it's just a really valuable resource, especially when you don't have cell service. It just gives you different tidbits and suggestions, and even tells you things like where free campsites might be or how much campsites might cost if you're camping along the way. It might tell you even like where a passing lane might be come up when you're stuck behind that really slow RV. So yeah, get the milepost. So tip number 2 is the weather in Alaska is out of your control. It's unpredictable. Even the weather forecast, you can't really rely on. The weather will change on an hourly basis, and you have to set your expectations that your plans can get changed, get thrown off. We had to learn the hard way to have patience. We just needed to sometimes roll with it. If you've been watching our videos, you saw how the weather impacted us a few times. And this is a must. If you are coming to Alaska, invest in good quality rain gear. It is invaluable. You're going to need it. There's going to be times where you're going to be out in the rain, you're going to get caught in the rain, you're going to be on a hike, and you're not going to want the flimsy stuff. You're going to want the good quality stuff that's going to keep you dry, keep you warm. So yeah, the weather is something else here. You'll get the days like today where it's just beautiful blue skies and sunshine, and then you'll get days where you can't see 100 yards in front of you. And then if you have your hopes up to see Denali, set those expectations as well. Again, we tried for I don't know how many days to see Denali, but the weather will work against you. We've been in Alaska for almost 2 months, and we think we maybe saw Denali. I maybe caught a glimpse of it as we were driving out of Anchorage the other day. She's pretty elusive. So tip number 3, and this one's tough because it really depends on how much time you're going to have here. We really recommend getting out and seeing as much of Alaska as you can. Try to get into the remote wilderness the best you can. I know that that's going to be time dependent. It's not always going to be feasible, practical. Obviously, money comes into consideration. But if you can make it work, I would really recommend getting on at least one bush flight while you're in Alaska. Get somewhere where you can't get to by the road. The scenery on the flight's going to be spectacular, and you're just going to get to see a lot of really cool things. So our 4th suggestion or tip is Alaska is a very big state, and it kind of goes with our last tip. Do the best you can to get out and see it, but there is a lot to see, and so as you are researching and planning, you have to take that into consideration. We've been here for almost 2 months, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface. There's a lot to see. There's a lot to bite off. If you're coming up here for just a week or 2, again, you need to set expectations. You're not going to get to see everything. It's too big of a state. There's too many areas, too hard to get to some of the places. There's a lot of travel time to get from place to place. Take that into consideration when you are planning your travels up here. And our last tip is, and it kind of goes with the last couple, but you really need to do your planning and research before you get up here. Think about what you want to do. Some of the activities, you're going to need guides, or you need to work with tour groups and whatnot, and those things can get booked out well ahead of time. So you do need to do a little bit of pre-planning. Yeah, you could wing it, I suppose, if you absolutely had to when you get up here, but I would really recommend do your research ahead of time. Prioritize the areas you want to be at, the things you want to do, the things that you need to book. Definitely get those booked. And keep in mind that things are expensive. So as you are planning and doing your research, set a budget. Things you need to take into consideration with that budget is things are just more expensive up here. Food is more expensive, accommodations and lodging is more expensive. And when you're setting that budget, don't forget gratuities. If you go on a guided trip with somebody, it's pretty customary to leave anywhere from 5 to 10% of a gratuity for your guide. And so think about that when you're looking at how much guided trips or tours might be. So factor that into the budget. All I can say is we've really enjoyed Alaska. We're going to share some more kind of just reflections and takeaways and some of our favorite things here, but we hope these tips are helpful as you plan your trip to Alaska. All right, so what were our favorite things in Alaska? You know, we were able to set foot and see all 8 national parks here. And the crazy thing is the national parks are, again, probably just a fraction of the beauty of Alaska. But that was a large, I guess, focus of our trip here in Alaska. Well, we were just reflecting on what were our favorite 3 places, our favorite 3 experiences. And I'm going to start from the bottom up. So it was actually for number 3, it was a toss-up for Lavinia and I. It was either Kenai Fjords or Glacier Bay. And I think what we really enjoyed about both of those places was getting out on the boats, seeing the glaciers, seeing the sea life, the marine life, the birds, in Kenai Fjords, we got to see orcas. We saw humpbacks in both places. But those were just really, really special parks. We really enjoyed our experiences there. So we're gonna call it a tie for number 3 between Glacier Bay and Kenai Fjords National Park. Coming in at number 2 is Gates of the Arctic. Man, go watch that video if you haven't watched it yet. It was just such a fun experience for us. There was something, just the remoteness of where we base camped, the flights that we took to get up there, and the flight scene that we did while we were there, even the hike that we did. It was just a really special place. That will always be something that just stays in my memory of Alaska. It's one of the places that if we do come back to Alaska, will be one of the first places we try to get back up to. So Gates of the Arctic was just a really great experience. And coming in at number 1 for both Lavinia and I was definitely Katmai. Again, if you haven't watched that video, go check out the bears. That experience of just being with the bears, being next to the bears, watching the bears go about their day, fishing, fighting each other. It was just a really cool experience, just base camping, again, in a very remote, wild part of Alaska. We had some pretty crazy weather, which we felt like kind of gave us more of a good Alaska experience. But that was just incredible. And again, if I come back to Alaska, I may not go back to the exact same spot that we were at, but I would definitely get into Katmai and go just witness and watch the bears. They are something special. I have a new love for the brown bears, a new respect for them. And that was by far my most favorite experience in Alaska. You know, it's hard to narrow down. I would say that these last couple months has been one of the best kind of travel experiences that we've had of all of our travels. This in of itself would have been a trip of a lifetime. So again, we're just feeling very blessed that we were able to spend a couple months up here, that we had the time to do this and to see the things that we saw. So we've spent a lot of time on the road here in Alaska, and there are not that many highways, but we were thinking about what were our favorite drives and what were our favorite highways that we drove. By far, the number 1 favorite for both of us was the Denali Highway. If you are going to be spending any amount of time in Alaska, get a car, and get over to the Denali Highway. It's just a really beautiful drive. I would recommend doing it in the direction from Paxson to Cantwell. That was the direction that we did it in. And take your time. We took a couple days to do that drive. You could rush it and do it in a half day if you really wanted to, but I would say take 2 days, sleep at least one night along the highway. There's tons of places to pull off and sleep for the night. But that was definitely one of our favorite drives. Another favorite drive of ours was the Haines Highway, driving up from Haines. We had taken the ferry from Juneau to Haines, and then we drove from Haines up to pretty much all the way up to Fairbanks. But that Haines Highway was really spectacular. Again, you really feel the remoteness of Alaska. We saw tons of eagles. I think we almost hit an eagle at one point. It literally almost flew into the van as we were driving, but really stunning scenery. Another, really pretty drive is the drive down to Seward, down into the Kenai Peninsula. We really enjoyed that one. Even the drive down to Skagway, as you come in and drive down into Skagway, it is really, really beautiful. It's actually hard to say there was any highway or drive that isn't pretty in Alaska. They really are. I mean, there's really no drive that you're like, oh, this is really boring and uneventful and has no scenery. Like, they all do. But thought we'd just kind of call out some of the drives that we found the most scenic and the ones that we enjoyed the most. All right, so we were also thinking about what were some of our favorite hikes. We were able to do quite a bit of hiking while we were here in Alaska. I think by far my most favorite hike, but it also ended up being probably the most strenuous, was the Harding Icefield hike in the Kenai Fjords National Park. The views were just amazing. We had beautiful blue skies that day. I mean, it was pretty strenuous. I think, what ended up being like 8 or 9 miles, about 3,000 feet elevation gain. But man, it is well worth it. I think in terms of, maybe a little bit less strenuous of a hike that we really enjoyed was the Savage Alpine Trail in Denali National Park. We actually got to see little glimpses of the side of Mount Denali that day. Of course, the top was still shrouded, but that was just a beautiful hike. If you're in Denali National Park and you're on the park road, go do the Savage Alpine Trail. And then what was a really cool experience was actually the hike that we did in Wrangell-St. Elias at the Root Glacier. And what was really cool about that is you actually get to go and get on the glacier. And what was even more cool about Wrangell-St. Elias is their trails are dog friendly. As you probably know, most national parks don't allow dogs on the hiking trails, but for whatever reason in Wrangell-St. Elias, they actually allow dogs. So yeah, as you see in this video, Tilly got to go on that hike with us. She got to hike on a glacier, and she absolutely loved that hike. She loved drinking the glacier water. She even loved laying down on the glacier. And so that was just a really fun experience for us and for her, and so that'll always be a special hike for us. Well, that's it. We are just about to cross over the border, and we are feeling a bit sad about leaving Alaska, but we're also leaving Alaska just feeling really blessed. I really hope that you've been able to watch our videos of our time and our experiences here. I really hope that I've been able to capture the beauty of this state. I've said this many times before. It is impossible to show you guys everything that we're seeing, but we've really enjoyed being here. We've enjoyed trying to capture some of the content and the footage. We hope you've enjoyed watching these videos. But that's it for now. We'll see you on the road next time, and may God bless you.
I wanna wander out of the valley where the river takes far away from home. Time to ponder in the fields around me where there's nothing but the breeze and the great unknown. Leave your worries and your suitcase, all you don't need, nothing but you. So don't throw your stone away, she will. It's your